Thanks, guys. On this week's ATV Ship Shape, we're sitting down with the Star Citizen flight team to play a game of hats versus no hats. No,
I think we're winning.
No, we wanted to sit down with the Star Citizen flight team and give an update on the flight model, where it's been, where it is, and hopefully a little bit about where it's going. So with us today is physics programmer Mr. John Pritchett, designer Pete Mackey, and designer Calix Renault. Hey. So let's do a quick recap from the very beginning here for folks who haven't been following the project and whatnot. The flight model, what's IFCS?
Okay, well, our goal from the beginning was to try to create a system to help manage, flight control for the ships, and not just to, do the typical things like pitch, roll, and yaw, but also to have a system that's dynamic enough to deal with when thrusters are damaged or blown off and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, IFCS is a dynamic system that sort of learns how to fly the ship from moment to moment and corrects in order to give you the best flight performance that it can based on your equipment.
Okay, we're going to use this acronym a few times during this conversation. What does IFCS stand for?
Intelligent Flight Control System.
Okay, and at the beginning that was paired with something called ComStab.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I know we're sort of moving away from ComStab, but when we started, what was ComStab?
Okay. Well, ComStab is just one part of many systems under IFCS, and the goal of ComStab originally was command level stability, and the idea was that at a high level you're controlling the ship, and you want to have controlled turns and controlled maneuvers, and so with ComStab on, it would make calculations to guarantee that those maneuvers are achieved in as well a controlled way as possible.
It's functionally similar to GSafe.
Mm-hmm.
You're setting IFCS into a mode where it looks for certain values of what your ship is attempting to do and sort of shoves it over a little bit to make it fit what it's allowed to do.
There's a lot of anti-slide back in the day, right?
Right. Well, the most obvious example of that was it was originally meant to be just a controlled turn. So it's a nose forward turn. You're always flying tangential to your turn radius, right? As opposed to now, if you rotate, faster than you can fly, you'll just kind of spin around. You'll slide or whatever. So, but that was fairly unpopular early on. So it turned into just kind of an anti-slide system, so that you wouldn't slide too much.
You used to slow you down to make the turns and stuff.
Yeah. So if you're turning at a certain rate, then there's a certain velocity that you can maintain in order to avoid sliding out.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. At the flight speeds that we were having, it didn't feel good, but you can basically see that same system in cruise mode right now. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty similar to how we were doing it before. Mm-hmm. That your rotation rates are going to scale back as you start going faster and faster. So you're not going to be able to pitch or yaw or rotate away from your flight vector if you can't actually go there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the last time we talked about this, you mentioned that first flight model was basically what we could get done at that time in order to get things started, because we needed to get Arena Commander going, we needed to start testing the game, and all these other systems were waiting. So we did the best version, or you did the best version of that flight model you could at that time. Right. But we always knew we wanted to go back, make some changes, and that eventually led to flight model 2.0 or IFCS 2.0.
Yes.
What's IFCS 2.0? I'm going to make Pete talk because he hasn't talked yet. Cool.
Well, really, it was to finish it off, and that I think we started on that. When was that? About a year ago, we probably had the first conversations, John and I did, about what we wanted to do with that. And it wasn't, at the time, it wasn't just IFCS 2.0, but it's a whole umbrella of like thruster upgrades and all of that stuff. So we kind of sat down and talked about like what we wanted. And one of the major features that came out of that, there was two major features that came out for IFCS, and that was the addition of different flight modes, which have now become precision SCM and cruise mode, and then the concept of what SCM mode is, which is the dynamic maximum velocity system that sets your maximum velocity based on your capability, whether that's how heavy in terms of mass that your ship is, how powerful your thrusters are. So so your maximum velocity could change, and it wouldn't just be a static value that we set in an XML somewhere. And so those were the kind of like the two major pieces that came out of what we wanted to do. But then over time, as we were working towards implementing that, there has been a whole host of improvements to just how IFCS works that are, I don't know that there's a lot that's really player facing, but it is, there's been a lot of work that's been done under the hood.
I know a lot of work's been done to evaluate thruster placement on some of our ships. And you said, Mass, we changed the way boost works a little bit, added afterburner.
Yeah, so that actually just was a natural extension of SCM, because boost always increased your acceleration, and since SCM was dependent upon your acceleration, if you increase your boost or increase your acceleration through the use of boost, then your maximum velocity would naturally increase. So that was kind of a nice freebie.
Now this system's been in since Alpha 2.0. So we're now 2.1 live, so we've had some time with it. What are some of the things that you've heard the fans say?
Well, one of the other things that we've put in here is the third order motion, putting in jerk and starting to tune those things. And for the initial pass, we were really aiming to recreate the performance that we had. But in order to do so in a timely manner, like while we still were trying to learn what the system meant and all of its consequences, we allowed a small amount of goal time slide. So that means that a lot of our ships are performing sometimes as much as a second slower than they used to, and people are noticing. Well, I mean.
And are they telling us on the forums?
They are.
Really?
And so now it's a matter of going in and revisiting the accelerations available to our ships so that we can return to having a lot of maneuverability. One of the things that I think has been successful is that you don't see people doing any of the like button mash strafe as it's not a thing anymore. A couple of other things got caught up in removing that, and people are not able to do the sort of fast and crazy knife fights that they used to, and I think that those are actually a healthy staple of our smallest ships. We want that in addition to some of the stuff that we're seeing now, the larger turn fights, the chasing using cruise and SCM and switching between these modes. So we have people have been responding to this and want the maneuverability, and they also want the hosto options. So your ability to chase or jumping into quantum and disappearing and then being able to track that person. That's something that's exciting, and doing combat in cruise isn't particularly supported at the moment, but the people who have pulled it off it's been very interesting. It's actually, even the ones who have pulled it off has been fairly unsuccessful. Like usually friends shooting at each other, but there's potential here to expand upon the flight and combat behaviors that we've been seeing. And that's what people generally are asking for, is to see the maneuverability return, to see, we're doing, in addition to all these things, we're updating how we're tracking our ships. So we have better and deeper numbers and are able to better get the actual performance data of our ships. So I can say that this ship is sliding too much, or too little, or has too much boost, or all of those things. We're able to track that better, and we're able to compare ships to each other better.
Are you suggesting that the ships in the game are not finished?
I am afraid that I am suggesting that.
Yeah, well, it's part of being in an alpha.
Yeah, I regret to inform you. I didn't realize it would deflate you so, but
finding out the game wasn't finished, just dropped me
Yeah.
in my set. I don't know what that did to my framing. Yeah.
Another one actually that I was talking with John about recently is third order motion is the amount of time or the acceleration of acceleration, and we track it as a singular element of the flight performance, which means that we have symmetrical ramp up and ramp down for our third order motion or for jerk, and that is beginning to prove problematic in some areas of how the ships feel, particularly when you're making frequent or small changes to what you're doing. You'll do a thing and then you'll see it continue to overshoot before it reacts, and so we're looking at addressing the ramp up and ramp down separately.
Now we do right now we do one IFCS for all, but at some point, in our development as we continue on, we're going to allow individual component changes to IFCS. Different different modules that can actually affect the precision mode, the SCM mode. I know it's really early. Can we talk at all about that?
Yeah,
some ideas.
It's basically taking a large block out of. A lot of people have seen our XMLs. It's really taking a block out of the ship XML and putting it into an item XML, and then letting that item be swapped out, and it will track things like, the performance on a given axis, or we can do pretty much anything that is tuned in the ship XML, but in an item basis. So then we can offer that as a package. Different manufacturers will offer different feature sets for the ships, and we're talking about even extending it beyond the flight mechanics into some other areas of the game, which I can't really talk about just yet. But it's the idea is making all of it modular, and so you could potentially have 3 or 4 different ones per ship. We're not there yet, but it's a possibility that could happen, and then that door is just open. That over time, we get more and more added.
Yeah. It's exciting to think that when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you come across a Vanguard or something, how the base model Vanguard may handle, but after this person's changed their ComStab, changed their IFCS and whatnot, they've affected the mass of their ship. They're using specific thrusters that are aftermarket that the ship may not handle.
Right.
Anything like what you'd expect.
Yeah.
So,
when the ship rolls off the lot, right, it will fly a certain way, but once you spend a lot of time with it, it might not fly that way anymore. It might fly the way you fly it.
That's one of the things I'm most excited about in Star Citizen. These ships, as we're putting out, these are the floor model versions, and then there's a whole aftermarket for tuning them up and tricking them out and changing. We're not going to say every characteristic, but quite a robust number of them.
Yeah, a lot of, pretty much. The support will be there that will let us behind the scenes change almost anything. We can do that now, but the difference is now that we can do it in a itemized way and do it so that a certain manufacturer might make certain types of IFCS modules, and so you'll tend to see those kinds of settings and features across their range, no matter what ship it's for. So it really helps with being able to theme it too.
There are many Vanguards, but this one is mine.
Right. Exactly.
There you go. So besides the itemization of of the IFCS and various flight control systems, anything else you can tell us about where we're going with the systems? Like what's next? What are the next milestones you want to hit?
Really, a big change that should be coming here pretty quick is going to be introducing the lack of precision in thrusters, and the idea that you're not going to always get perfect control, even if it's a perfect ship. If it just you just fly it off the showroom floor. Some manufacturers will have more precise thrusters and some will have less, and really any motion right now you can really see kind of perfection in the way it's achieving that motion, and so we're going to introduce some turbulence, things like that, so that there's a range of precision.
We have a small amount of that in it already, where I've actually been surprised. I'll like make a test level to check something out, and I'll have a ship there. And then I looked over at it, and I just see it sort of hovering.
Sure, yeah, that's
like,
been for a while. It's landing turbulence. But.
Yeah, which is having that element of slight imprecision, that slight error in your thrusters, makes these things behave much more realistically, much more interestingly. And being able to
alive.
and being able to expand upon that instability as you take damage, as you induce stress, possibly from pulling like hard G turns, or heat, dealing with any sort of external forces. Those things are going to change the way that it flies and give you that turbulence, which is great because you can feel it, you can see it, and it's just a win across the board.
Or even damaged thrusters.
Yes.
Like when you're in a constellation and Calyx is flying and we can't move anywhere and we're wondering why. And we're there for 5 minutes before we realize we don't have thrusters on our ship anymore. It's like, oh, that's why. Now, before we go, one of the more popular topics is atmospheric flight. Now, we've said that this is something that will eventually make it into Star Citizen, something that'll probably come. We don't want to say when, but it's a long-term goal, kind of like the procedurally generated planets was and whatnot. As we ramped up, I know we're starting to lay some of the foundation for that, so when it comes time, we don't have to start from scratch. What can you tell us about atmospheric flight now? Remember, it's not coming tomorrow or anytime soon, guys. Just is there something you can tell us about atmospheric flight? I know that in Arena Commander in the racing mode, that is not atmospheric flight.
Right.
No, there's no atmosphere in New Horizons yet.
No, that's a video game within a video game. It's we strive for perfection. Maybe Electronic Access does not.
Yeah.
So
the thing about atmospheric flight and really everything about IFCS is that it's completely agnostic to the condition of the ship. So if you take the ship and you say, I want to make a right turn, I want to roll, I want to yaw, I want to strafe, it's going to attempt to do those things and then deal with the forces it encounters. So if we add forces, inflicting forces upon the ship by way of atmospheric resistance, doing any sort of drag or lift calculations to apply forces to this ship, it's going to work just sort of out of the box. The question that we're dealing with now is, what is the best way to apply those forces to these ships?
what is the best way to apply them?
I really don't want to get into a lot of aerodynamics with our ships. I kind of like to just.
This conversation's plenty dry enough.
Not very aerodynamic.
No, I mean in the game, I don't want to get into aerodynamics for our ships. I don't want to have to model aerodynamics. I want to really treat it more as you're flying a spaceship into atmosphere, so you've got some more turbulence going on. But you're still flying it with your thrusters. You're not dealing with control surfaces, for turns and things like that. And if that's the case, then it should work pretty well as designed. I think it'll be interesting having atmospheric drag, because then your thrusters are always pushing to give you the constant velocity, whereas in space, once you get there, the thrusters turn off. So, and what we talked about with the turbulence from precision from the thrusters, you'll see a lot of turbulence just from flying through atmosphere and things like that. So.
All right, well, thank you guys. This was a nice little refresher on the flight model. We've done one of these before. We'll put the link right down here if you want to see where this conversation started a couple months ago. John, Pete, Calyx, thanks so much for taking the time to sit down with us. And back to you guys.